PSY-MODULE 44, Prosocial Relations. As social animals, as people who need people, we often approach others not with closed fists, but with open arms. Social psychologists focus not only on the dark side of social relationships, but also on this bright side, by studying prosocial behavior that intends to help or benefit someone. Our positive behaviors toward others are evident from explorations of attraction, altruism, and compassion, and peacemaking. We humans are social beings. We come into the world as the result of others' actions. We survive here in dependence on others. Whether we like it or not, there is hardly a moment of our lives when we do not benefit from others' activities. For this reason, it is hardly surprising that most of our happiness arises in the context of our relationships with others. Dalai Lama 14, Ethics for the New Millennium, 2019. Attraction. Pause a moment and think about your relationships. What led to you becoming close friends with someone, or stirred your romantic feelings for someone else? What psychological chemistry binds us together in friendship or love? Social psychology suggests some answers. The psychology of attraction. LOQ 44-1. Why do we befriend or fall in love with some people but not others? We spend a lot of time thinking about how we can win others' affection and what makes our own affections flourish or fade. Does familiarity breed contempt, or does it amplify affection? Do birds of a feather flock together, or do opposites attract? Is it what's inside that counts, or does physical attractiveness matter, too? To explore these questions, let's consider three ingredients of our liking for one another: proximity, attractiveness, and similarity. Proximity. Before friendships become close, they must begin. Proximity. Geographic nearness is one of friendship's most powerful predictors. ETAL, 2009, Nahimo and Lawton, 1975. Proximity can provide opportunities for aggression. But much more often it breeds liking, and sometimes romance, among those who live in the same neighborhood, sit nearby in class, work in the same office, share the same parking lot, or eat in the same dining hall. Look around. Mating starts with meeting. The power of proximity was illustrated at a Seeds of Peace Israeli summer camp, White ETAL, 2021. The camp sought to reduce intergroup conflict among outgroup pairs, Jewish and Palestinian teens, with one of three strategies: share a sleeping bunk, eat at the same table, or attend the same 110-minute dialogue group. Proximity mattered most. Outgroup pairs who shared a sleeping bunk, versus those who did not, were 11 times more likely to become friends. Keep your enemies close and they might become your friends. Proximity breeds liking partly because of the mere exposure effect. Repeated exposure to novel visual stimuli increases our liking for them. By age 3 months, infants prefer photos of the race they most often see, usually their own race. Kelly ETAL, 2007. Familiarity with a face also makes it look happier. Carr ETAL, 2017. For our ancestors, this mere exposure effect likely had survival value. What was familiar was generally safe and approachable. What was unfamiliar was more often dangerous and threatening. Evolution may therefore have hardwired into us the tendency to bond with those who look familiar and to be wary of those who look unfamiliar. Sofer ETAL, 2015, Zajonk, 1998. Mere exposure leads to familiarity and thus increases our liking not only for faces, but also for musical selections, geometric figures, Chinese characters, for Chinese language learners, and for the letters of our own name. Moreland and Zajonk, 1982, Nutten, 1987, Rees ETAL, 2011, Zajonk, 2001. Mere exposure even increases unconscious liking of nonsense syllables, strings of letters presented so quickly our minds don't consciously process them. Van de Sel et al., 2019. So, up to a point, after which the effect wears off, familiarity feeds fondness. Bornstein, 1989, 1999, Montoya et al., 2017. This would come as no surprise to the young Taiwanese man who wrote more than 700 letters to his girlfriend, urging her to marry him. She did marry the mail carrier, Steinberg, 1993. No face is more familiar than your own. And that helps explain an interesting finding by Lisa de Bruin, 2002, 2004. We like other people when their faces incorporate some morphed features of our own. When McMaster University students played an electronic game with a supposed other player, they were more trusting and cooperative when the other person's image had some of their own facial features morphed into it. In me I trust. Modern matchmaking. Those who have not found a romantic partner in their immediate proximity may cast a wider net. Millions search for love online. Despite some risks which, for about half of young U.S. women using online dating sites and apps, include receiving unwanted sexual messages, Anderson et al., 2020, Brown, 2020, an estimated 77 million people worldwide use online matchmaking services, Statista, 2022. Online matchmaking expands the pool of potential mates, especially for same-sex couples, Finkel et al., 2012 AB, Rosenfeld et al., 2019. Among couples surveyed in 2017 that had met during the Internet age, 39% of straight couples and 65% of same-sex couples met online, Rosenfeld et al., 2019, see figure 44.1. Compared to couples meeting offline, those who meet online more often differ in race or ethnicity, Brown, 2019. How effective is the matchmaking? Compared with friendships and romances that began in person, Internet-formed relationships are, on average, slightly more likely to last and be satisfying. Barg and McKenna, 2004, Barg et al., 2002, Cacioppo et al., 2013. In one study, people disclosed more, with less posturing, to those whom they met online, McKenna et al., 2002. When talking via text or chat with someone for 20 minutes, they felt more liking for that person than they did for someone they had met and talked with face to face. This was true even when, unknown to them, it was the same person. Speed dating pushes the search for romance into high gear. At these events, which were pioneered by a matchmaking Jewish rabbi, people meet a succession of prospective partners, either in person or via webcam. Bauer, 2009. After a brief 3 to 8 minute conversation, people move on to the next prospect. Those who want to meet again can arrange for future contact. For many participants, a few minutes is enough time to form a feeling about a conversational partner and to register whether the partner likes them. Finkel and Eastwick, 2008. For researchers, speed dating offers a unique opportunity for studying influences on our first impressions of potential romantic partners. Some findings. People who fear rejection often elicit rejection. After a 3-minute speed date, those who most feared rejection were least often selected for a follow-up date. McClure and Lydon, 2014. Given more options, people make more superficial choices. When people meet lots of potential partners, they focus on more easily assessed characteristics, such as height and weight. Lenton and Francisconi, 2010. Similarity is in the eye of the beholder. After interacting with dating candidates for 4 minutes each, people's perceived but not actual similarity with each person predicted their romantic interest. Tidwell et al., 2013. For an exploration of the challenges and opportunities that social distancing posed for people seeking romantic partners, watch this video, Navigating the Dating Scene During the Pandemic. Physical attractiveness. Once proximity affords us contact, what most affects our first impressions? The person's sincerity? Intelligence? Personality? Hundreds of experiments reveal that it is something more superficial, physical appearance. This finding is unnerving for those of us taught that beauty is only skin deep and appearances can be deceiving. In one early study, researchers randomly matched new students for heterosexual blind dates in a welcome week dance, Walster et al., 1966. Before the dance, the researchers gave each student a battery of personality and aptitude tests, and they rated each student's physical attractiveness. The couples danced and talked for more than 2 hours and then took a brief intermission to rate their dates. What predicted whether they liked each other? Only one thing: appearance. Both the men and the women liked good-looking dates best. Women are more likely than men to say that another's looks don't affect them, Lipa, 2007. But studies show that a man's looks do affect women's behavior, Eastwick et al., 2014 AB. In speed dating experiments, attractiveness influences first impressions and liking for men and women, Bellet and Francisconi, 2006, Finkel and Eastwick, 2008. Physical attractiveness also predicts how often people date and how popular they feel. And it affects initial impressions of people's personalities. We perceive attractive people as healthier, happier, more sensitive, more successful, and more socially skilled, Eagley et al., 1991, Fink and Pentenvoke, 2002. We dehumanize unattractive people, especially women, Ali et al., 2022. This dehumanization can have deadly results. When asked whether they would be willing to kill one person to save 5 people, participants were more willing to sacrifice the life of an unattractive person. Personal beauty is a greater recommendation than any letter of introduction. Aristotle, Apothegms, 330 BCE. For those who find the importance of looks unfair, sexist, or unenlightened, 3 other findings offer some reassurance. People's attractiveness is unrelated to their self-esteem and happiness, Diener et al., 1995, Major et al., 1984. And unless we have just compared ourselves with extremely attractive people, few of us, thanks, perhaps, to the mere exposure effect, view ourselves as highly unattractive, Griedemeyer, 2020, Thornton and Moore, 1993. Very attractive people are sometimes suspicious that praise for their work may simply be a reaction to their looks. Less attractive people have been more likely to accept praise as sincere, Burscheid, 1981. For couples who were friends before lovers who became romantically involved long after first meeting, looks matter less, Hunt et al., 2015. With slow-cooked love, shared values and interests matter more. Beauty is also in the eye of the culture. People across the globe have modified their bodies in different ways, driven by cultural ideas of attractiveness. They have pierced and tattooed their bodies, lengthened their necks, bound their feet, artificially lightened or darkened their skin or hair, and bulked up their muscles. They have applied chemicals to rid themselves of unwanted hair or to regrow wanted hair, and used undergarments to change the proportions of waists, hips, and breasts. Cultural ideals also change over time and with context. For women in North America, for example, the ultra-thin ideal of the Roaring Twenties gave way to the soft, voluptuous Marilyn Monroe ideal of the 1950s and then to today's more athletic ideal look. Some aspects of sexual attractiveness, however, do cross place and time, Cunningham et al., 2005, Langlois et al., 2000. By providing reproductive clues, bodies influence sexual attraction. As some evolutionary psychologists explain, straight men in cultures worldwide judge romantic partners as more attractive if they have a youthful, fertile appearance. Walter et al., 2020. Straight women feel attracted to men who are healthy and fertile looking, but are most attracted to men who seem mature, dominant, and affluent. Feingold, 1990, Gallup and Frederick, 2010, Gangestat et al., 2010. One review reported that straight men may place higher value on physical attractiveness than straight women. Feingold, 1990. Gay and bisexual women have reported a preference for larger body figures. Cohen and Tannenbaum, 2001. People's attractiveness influences our first impressions. We tend to think that what is beautiful is also good. But we also perceive what is good as beautiful. He et al., 2022. Our feelings color our attractiveness judgments. Imagine two people, one is honest, humorous, and polite. The other is rude, unfair, and abusive. Which one is more attractive? Most people perceive the person with the appealing traits as more physically attractive. Lewandowski et al., 2007. Or imagine being paired with a stranger of the gender you find attractive, someone who listens intently to your self-disclosures. Might you feel a twinge of sexual attraction toward that empathic person? Student volunteers did, in several experiments. Birnbaum and Rees, 2012. People find smiling potential partners more attractive. Murabian and Bloom, 2018. Those we like we find attractive. Shakespeare said it in A Midsummer Night's Dream, love looks not with the eyes, but with the mind. As we see our loved ones repeatedly, their physical imperfections grow less noticeable and their attractiveness grows more apparent. Beeman and Clance, 1983, Gross and Crofton, 1977. Come to love someone and watch beauty grow. Love sees loveliness. Similarity. So, proximity has brought you into contact with someone, and your appearance has made an acceptable first impression. What influences whether you will become friends? As you get to know each other, will the chemistry be better if you are opposites or if you are alike? It makes a good story extremely different types liking or loving each other. Unlikely friends Frog and Toad in Arnold Lobel's books, unlikely couple Hermione and Ron in the Harry Potter series. But in many real-life situations, opposites retract. Montoya and Horton, 2013, Oesterhoff et al., 2022, Rosenbaum, 1986. Tall people often find true love with other tall people. Short people show a soft spot for other short people. Yango et al., 2018. Compared with randomly paired people, friends and couples are far more likely to share and to like those with whom they share attitudes, beliefs, interests, and even personality traits, and, for that matter, age, religion, race, education, intelligence, smoking behavior, and economic status. Most people's immediate neighbors tend to be from the same political party. Brown and Enos, 2021. As C.S. Lewis, 1960, observed, what draws people to be friends is that they see the same truth. While there is some evidence that among married, same-sex couples, similarity in personality may not predict long-term happiness, Shiata and Levinson, 2007, for most relationships, the more alike people are, the more their liking endures. Byrne, 1971, Hartle et al., 2015. One journalist was right to suppose that love lasts when the lovers love many things together, and not merely each other. Lipman, 1929. Proximity, attractiveness, and similarity are not the only determinants of attraction. We also like those who like us. When we believe someone likes us, we feel good and respond to them warmly, which leads them to like us even more. Curtis and Miller, 1986. To be liked is powerfully rewarding. Moreover, there is a liking gap. After two strangers interact, both tend to report liking the other person more than they presume the other liked them. This is good news to remember. Most people immediately like us more than we realize. Booth BETAL, 2018, Wolf ETAL, 2021. Indeed, all the findings we have considered so far can be explained by a simple reward theory of attraction. We will like those whose behavior is rewarding to us, including those who are both able and willing to help us achieve our goals. Montoya and Horton, 2014. When people live or work in close proximity to us, it requires less time and effort to develop the friendship and enjoy its benefits. When people are attractive, they are aesthetically pleasing, and associating with them can be socially rewarding. When people share our views, they reward us by validating our own beliefs. Ask yourself, to what extent have your closest relationships been affected by proximity, physical attractiveness, and similarity? Retrieval practice. Answers in Appendix E. Romantic love. LOQ 44-2. How does romantic love typically change as time passes? Sometimes people move from initial impressions to friendship to the more intense, complex, and mysterious state of new romantic love. If love endures, temporary passionate love will mellow into a lingering companionate love. Hatfield, 1988, Fair ETAL, 2014. Passionate love. Passionate love mixes something new with something positive. Aaron ETAL, 2000, Coulter and Malouf, 2013. We intensely desire to be with our partner, and seeing our partner stimulates blood flow to brain regions linked to craving and obsession. Acevedo ETAL, 2012, Hatfield ETAL, 2015. The two-factor theory of emotion can help us understand the intense positive absorption of passionate love. Hatfield, 1988. It assumes that emotions have two ingredients: physical arousal plus cognitive appraisal. Arousal from any source can enhance one emotion or another, depending on how we interpret and label the arousal. In one classic experiment, researchers studied straight men crossing two bridges above British Columbia's rocky Capilano River. Dutton and Aaron, 1974, 1989. 1. A swaying footbridge was 230 feet, 70 meters, above the rocks. The other was low and solid. As the men came off each bridge, an attractive young woman, working for the researchers, intercepted them and asked them to fill out a short questionnaire. She then offered her phone number in case they wanted to hear more about her project. Far more of the men who had just crossed the high bridge, which left their hearts pounding, accepted the number and later called the woman. To be revved up and to associate some of that arousal with a desirable person is to feel the pull of passion. So, if you're looking for romance, perhaps take your date to a climbing gym. Adrenaline makes the heart grow fonder. Sexual desire plus a growing attachment equals passionate love. Burscheid, 2010. Companionate love. Although the desire and attachment of romantic love often endure, the intense absorption in the other, the thrill of the romance, the giddy floating on a cloud feelings typically fade. Does this mean the French are correct in saying that love makes the time pass and time makes love pass? Or can friendship and commitment keep a relationship going after the passion cools? As love matures, it typically becomes a steadier companionate love, a deep, affectionate attachment. Hatfield, 1988. For people worldwide, as relationships mature they evolve, passion subsides and commitment grows. Sarikowski et al., 2021. Like a passing storm, the flood of passion-facilitating hormones, testosterone, dopamine, adrenaline, subsides. But another hormone, oxytocin, remains, supporting feelings of trust, calmness, and bonding with the mate. This shift from passion to attachment has adaptive value. Rees and Aaron, 2008. Passionate love often produces children. Companionate love aids children's survival as the parents lose their obsession with each other. In the most satisfying marriages, attraction and sexual desire endure, minus the obsession of early romance. Acevedo and Aaron, 2009. Recognizing the short duration of obsessive passionate love, some societies deem such feelings an irrational reason for marrying. Better, they say, to seek, or have someone seek for you, a partner with a compatible background and interests. Cultures where people rate love as less important for marriage do have lower divorce rates. Levine et al., 1995. One key to a gratifying and enduring relationship is equity. When equity exists, when both partners receive in proportion to what they give, the chances for sustained and satisfying companionate love are good. Gray Little and Burks, 1983, Van Eperen and Buonk, 1990. In one national survey, sharing household chores ranked third, after having shared interests and a satisfying sexual relationship, on a list of 7 things people associated with successful marriages. Geiger, 2016. As the saying goes, I like hugs. I like kisses. But what I really love is help with the dishes. Equity's importance extends beyond marriage. Mutually sharing oneself and possessions, making decisions together, giving and getting emotional support, promoting and caring about each other's welfare, all of these acts are at the core of every type of loving relationship. Sternberg and Grojek, 1984. It's true for lovers, for parent and child, and for close friends. Sharing includes self-disclosure, revealing intimate details about ourselves, our likes and dislikes, our dreams and worries, our proud and shameful moments. When I am with my friend, noted the Roman statesman Seneca, methinks I am alone, and as much at liberty to speak anything as to think it. Self-disclosure breeds liking, and liking breeds self-disclosure. Collins and Miller, 1994. As one person reveals a little, the other reciprocates, the first then reveals more, and on, as lovers, and friends, move to deeper levels of intimacy. Baumeister and Bratslavsky, 1999. One experiment marched some student pairs through 45 minutes of increasingly self-disclosing conversation, from what is the greatest accomplishment of your life, to when did you last cry in front of another person? By yourself. Other pairs spent the time with small talk questions, such as what was your high school like? Aaron et al., 1997. By the experiment's end, those experiencing the escalating intimacy felt much closer to their conversation partner than did the small talkers. Likewise, after dating couples spent 45 minutes answering such questions, they felt increased love. Welker et al., 2014. In addition to equity and self-disclosure, a third key to enduring love is positive support. For happy couples in enduring relationships, positive interactions, compliments, touches, laughing, outnumber negative interactions, sarcasm, disapproval, insults, by at least 5 to 1, Gottman and Gottman, 2022. In the mathematics of love, self-disclosing intimacy plus mutually supportive equity equals enduring companionate love. Relationship conflicts are inevitable, but hurtful communications are not. Do we more often express sarcasm or support, scorn or sympathy, sneers or smiles. In romance, a rejection hurts more and for longer than an acceptance pleases. Dobson et al., 2020. For unhappy couples, disagreements, criticisms, and put-downs are routine. It takes multiple compliments to equal the attention-getting and emotion-affecting power of one criticism. Couples benefit from making space for positive communication. In one experiment, some couples were randomly assigned to once a week spend 15 minutes with their partner writing down 3 good things that happened to you as a couple during the week and noting why did this good thing happen. After 6 weekly repetitions, these couples reported increased satisfaction and intimacy. Boyman Meshita and Litmanovaitia, 2021. Retrieval practice. Answers in Appendix E. Altruism. LOQ 44-3. What is altruism? When are people most and least likely to help? We are made for goodness, observed South African Archbishop Desmond Tutu, 1931-2021. Why else do we get so outraged by wrong? So it seemed during the first 2 weeks of March, 2021. Outraged by Russia's violence against Ukraine, people from 165 countries booked more than 430,000 nights at Ukrainian Airbnbs, most belonging to people they did not know. Friedman, 2022. The purchasers had no intention of using the reservation, they simply wanted to donate money to people who were hurting. In the invasion's first 2 weeks, nearly $400 million in additional donations were made by people from around the world to support Ukrainians. Ruhi, 2022. Among those fleeing Ukraine were cousins Lesia Orshoko and Alona Chugai. On their arrival in Israel, they were welcomed by Sharon Bass, a Jew who owed her existence to the long-ago altruism of the cousin's righteous Gentile Ukrainian grandmother, Maria Blyshchuk. For 2 years Blyshchuk hid Bass's grandmother, Fania Rosenfeld, then a teen, sparing her from the Holocaust that killed her parents and 5 siblings. After later relocating to Israel, Fania Rosenfeld Bass would tell the story over and over to her children and grandchildren, letting them know about the good people who held on to their humanity and quietly rebelled against the horrors of the war. Greenbaum, 2022. 8 decades later, as war ravaged Ukraine, Sharon Bass reciprocated that heroic goodness by enabling the cousins' escape to Israel and welcoming them into her home. For as long as they wish, she said, her house is their house. Such acts of altruism show that humans are capable of great evil, but also, as we shall see, of great goodness. Altruism became a major concern of social psychologists after a widely publicized incident. On March 13, 1964, a stalker repeatedly stabbed Kitty Genovese, then raped her as she lay dying outside her Queens, New York, apartment at 3:30 a.m. "Oh, my God, he stabbed me." Genovese screamed into the early morning stillness. "Please help me." Windows opened and lights went on as some neighbors heard her screams. Her attacker fled and then returned to stab and rape her again. No one called the police or came to her aid until it was too late. Bystander intervention. Newspaper accounts of the murder, which misreported the number of witnesses and their responses to Genovese's cries, triggered public outrage over the bystanders' apparent apathy and indifference. However, social psychologists John Darley and Bibb Latané, 1968, attributed bystanders' inaction not to character flaws or moral choices, but to an important situational factor: the presence of others. Given certain circumstances, they suspected, most of us would behave similarly. To paraphrase the French writer Voltaire, we all are guilty of the good we did not do. After staging emergencies under various conditions, Darley and Lataine assembled their findings into a decision scheme. We will help only if the situation enables us first to notice the incident, then to interpret it as an emergency, and finally to assume responsibility for helping. Figure 44.2. At each step, the presence of others can turn us away from the path that leads to helping. One of Darley and Lataine's experiments staged a fake emergency as students in separate laboratory rooms took turns talking over an intercom. Only the person whose microphone was switched on could be heard. When his turn came, one student, actually an accomplice, pretended to have an epileptic seizure, and he called for help. Darley and Lataine, 1968. How did the others react? As figure 44.3 shows, those who believed only they could hear the victim and therefore thought they alone were responsible for helping him usually went to his aid. Students who thought others could also hear the victim's cries were more likely to do nothing. When more people shared responsibility for helping when there was a diffusion of responsibility, any single listener was less likely to help. Indeed, inattention and diffused responsibility contribute to global bystander non-intervention as millions of faraway people die of hunger, disease, and genocide. Pitinsky and Diamante, 2015. Hundreds of additional experiments have confirmed this. Bystander effect. For example, researchers and their assistants took 1,497 elevator rides in 3 cities and accidentally dropped coins or pencils in front of 4,813 fellow passengers. Lataine and Dabbs, 1975. When alone with the person in need, 40% helped. In the presence of 5 other bystanders, only 20% helped. When reflecting on the bystander research or on the conformity and obedience experiments in Module 42, it's tempting to think that, unlike many of the participants, we would have responded with moral courage. We may tell ourselves that, unlike so many others who lived before us, we would have taken steps to protect Jews from the Nazi genocide or intervened as George Floyd was slowly killed by a police officer. But research suggests we do not always act according to the better angels of our nature. In experiments, people greatly overestimate the odds of their protesting a sexist remark or a racial slur. Swim and Hires, 1999. Although the presence of other bystanders reduces the chance that an individual will offer help, often, people do help. In CCTV surveillance of arguments and fights caught on the streets of Amsterdam, Lancaster, and Cape Town, 9 times out of 10 at least one bystander and usually more did something to help. Philpott et al., 2019. Another research team planted 17,303 lost wallets in 40 countries, walking into public places such as hotels, post offices, and banks and explaining to a clerk, "I found this on the street around the corner. Someone must have lost it. I'm in a hurry and have to go. Can you please take care of it?" 40% of those given cashless wallets alerted the owner. Surprisingly to economists surveyed, those receiving wallets with cash were even more likely, 51%, to help. Cohn et al., 2019. Observations of behavior in thousands of these situations: relaying an emergency phone call, aiding a stranded motorist, donating blood, picking up dropped books, contributing money, giving time show that the odds of our helping someone depend on the characteristics of that person, the situation, and our own internal state. The odds of helping are highest when the person appears to need and deserve help. The person is in some way similar to us. The person is a woman. We have just observed someone else being helpful. We are not in a hurry. We are in a small town or rural area. We are feeling guilty. We are focused on others and not preoccupied. We are in a good mood. The good mood result that happy people are helpful people is one of psychology's most consistent findings. As poet Robert Browning, 1868, observed, "Oh, make us happy and you make us good." It doesn't matter how we are cheered. Whether by being made to feel successful and intelligent, by thinking happy thoughts, by finding money, or even by receiving a post-hypnotic suggestion, we become more generous and more eager to help. Aknon et al., 2019. Moreover, the world's happiest countries are also countries where people more often volunteer, give money, and even offer organ donations. Rhodes et al., 2021. And if our feeling of elevation follows witnessing or learning of someone else's self-giving deed, our helping will become even more pronounced. Schnall et al., 2010. So, happiness begets helpfulness. But it's also true that helpfulness breeds happiness. Hui et al., 2020. Helping those in need activates brain areas associated with reward. Harbaugh et al., 2007, Kawamichi et al., 2015. That helps explain a curious finding: people who give money away are happier than those who spend it almost entirely on themselves. In one controlled experiment, researchers gave people money and instructed one group to spend it on themselves, and another group to spend it on others. Aknon et al., 2020. Which group was happiest afterward? It was, indeed, those assigned to the spend it on others condition. Worldwide, people in both rich and developing countries were happier with their lives if they had donated to a charity in the last month. Dunn et al., 2008. You can likely recall a mood boost merely from giving directions to a stranger. The lesson: doing good feels good. Ask yourself. Imagine being a newcomer needing directions at a busy bus station. What could you do to increase the odds that someone will assist you, and what sort of person would be most likely to help? Retrieval practice. Answers in Appendix E. Norms for helping. LOQ 44-4. How do social exchange theory and social norms explain helping behavior? Why do we help? One widely held view is that self-interest underlies all human interactions, that our constant goal is to maximize rewards and minimize costs. Accountants call it cost-benefit analysis. Philosophers call it utilitarianism. Social psychologists call it social exchange theory. For example, if you are considering donating blood, you may weigh the costs of doing so, time, discomfort, anxiety, against the benefits, reduced guilt, social approval, good feelings. If the rewards exceed the costs, you will donate blood. Others believe we help because we have been socialized to do so, through norms that prescribe how we ought to behave. Everett et al., 2015. Two such norms are the reciprocity norm and the social responsibility norm. The reciprocity norm is the expectation that we should help, not harm, those who have helped us. Those for whom we do favors will often return favors. Be kind to others and you may elicit future kindness from them. With similar others, the reciprocity norm motivates us to give, in favors, gifts, or social invitations, about as much as we receive. Sometimes this means paying it forward. In one experiment, people who were treated generously became more likely to be generous to a stranger. Tsvetkova and Macy, 2014. Returning favors feels good, so we tend to find the reciprocity norm a pleasant way to help others. Hein et al., 2016. The reciprocity norm kicked in after Dave Talley found $3,300 in a backpack that an Arizona State University student had misplaced on his way to buy a used car. Lacey, 2010. Talley was homeless at the time, but instead of using the cash for much-needed bike repairs, food, and shelter, he turned the backpack into the social service agency where he volunteered. To reciprocate Talley's help, the backpack's owner thanked him with a cash reward. Hearing about Talley's selfless deed, dozens of others also sent him money and job offers. The social responsibility norm is the expectation that we should help those who need our help, such as young children and newcomers, even if the costs outweigh the benefits. Europeans are most responsive to help sought by the most vulnerable asylum seekers, those, for example, who have been tortured or have no surviving family. Bansack et al., 2016. During the COVID-19 pandemic, many people, despite the risk of infection, cared for the sick, shopped for older neighbors, and donated money to help those in need. Friedman et al., 2022. Many people also responded affirmatively to persuasion that defined mask wearing as an act of kindness and concern for others. Van Bavel et al., 2020. We're especially likely to respond to requests for help when asked face-to-face, rather than by phone or email. Roganizat and Bones, 2022. People often hesitate to ask others to, for example, take their photo at a picturesque place. But experiments show that they underestimate others' willingness to help and underestimate how positively helpers will feel. Zhao et al., 2022. So, when you could use a favor, just ask. More often than you suppose, people, even strangers, will gladly help and feel good about doing so. Many world religions encourage their followers to practice the social responsibility norm, and sometimes this leads to prosocial behavior. Henrik, 2020. Between 2006 and 2008, Gallup polls sampled more than 300,000 people across 140 countries, comparing the highly religious, who said religion was important to them and who had attended a religious service in the prior week, to those less religious. The highly religious, despite being poorer, were about 50% more likely to report having donated money to a charity in the last month and to have volunteered time to an organization. Pelham and Crabtree, 2008. New surveys of 8,000 Australians and 32,000 New Zealanders replicated this association of religious engagement with volunteerism. Petrovic et al., 2021, Van Tongeren et al., 2021. In more than 24 God-priming studies, merely reminding people of God led them to cheat less and help more. Henrik, 2020. From conflict to peace. Positive social norms encourage generosity and enable group living. But conflicts often divide us. One response to recent conflict and scarcity-driven migrations has been anti-immigrant nationalism and nativism, favoring native-born citizens over newcomers. Psychologists have wondered, what in the human mind causes destructive conflict? How might a spirit of cooperation replace the perceived threats of social diversity? Elements of conflict. LOQ 44-5. How do social traps and mirror image perceptions fuel social conflict? To a social psychologist, a conflict is a perceived incompatibility of actions, goals, or ideas. The elements of conflict are much the same, whether partners sparring, political groups feuding, or nations at war. In each situation, conflict may seed positive change, or it may be a destructive process that can produce unwanted results. Among the destructive processes are social traps and distorted perceptions. Social traps. In some situations, pursuing our personal interests also supports our collective well-being. A person may choose to get vaccinated for self-protection from a contagious disease, but their decision means that they are also less likely to pass that disease on to others, and the whole community benefits from it. In other situations, we harm our collective well-being by pursuing our personal interests. Such situations are social traps. Researchers have created many social traps in laboratory games that require two participants to choose between pursuing their immediate self-interest, at others' expense, versus cooperating for mutual benefits. Many real-life situations similarly pit our individual interests against our communal well-being. Individual fish trawlers reasoned that the fish they took would not threaten the species and that if they didn't take them, others would anyway. The result: depleted fish stocks. Anticipating COVID-19 related shutdowns, people bought and hoarded toilet paper, leaving shelves empty for others. Individual car owners and homeowners reason, electric cars are more expensive. Besides, the fuel that I burn in my one car doesn't noticeably add to the greenhouse gases. When enough people reason similarly, the collective result threatens disaster: climate change, rising seas, and more extreme weather. Social traps challenge us to reconcile our right to pursue our personal well-being with our responsibility for the well-being of all. Psychologists have therefore explored ways to convince people to cooperate for their mutual betterment through agreed-upon regulations, through better communication, and through promoting awareness of our responsibilities toward community, nation, and the whole of humanity. Dawes, 1980, Kraft et al., 2015, Linder, 1982, Sato, 1987. Given effective regulations, communication, and awareness, people more often cooperate, whether playing a laboratory game or the real game of life. Enemy perceptions. Psychologists have noted that those in conflict have a curious tendency to form diabolical images of one another. These distorted images are, ironically, so similar that we call them mirror image perceptions, as we see them as untrustworthy, with evil intentions so they see us. Each demonizes the other. My political party, unlike the other party, has the nation's best interests at heart. Waits et al., 2014. Mirror image perceptions can often feed a vicious cycle of hostility. If one believes Maria is annoyed with him, he may snub her, causing her to act in ways that justify his perception. As with individuals, so with countries. Perceptions can become self-fulfilling prophecies, beliefs that confirm themselves by influencing the other country to react in ways that seem to justify those beliefs. In the real world, we make what we believe. Individuals and nations alike tend to see their own actions as responses to provocation, not as the causes of what happens next. Perceiving themselves as returning tit for tat, they often hit back harder, as University College London volunteers did in one experiment. Shergill et al., 2003. Their task: after feeling pressure on their own finger, they used a mechanical device to press on another volunteer's finger. Although told to reciprocate with the same amount of pressure, they typically responded with about 40% more force than they had just experienced. Despite seeking only to respond in kind, their touches soon escalated to hard presses, much as when each child involved in a fight asserts, "I just touched them, but they hit me." Mirror image perceptions feed similar cycles of hostility on the world stage. To most people, torture seems more justified when done by us rather than them. Tarrant et al., 2012. The point is not that truth must lie midway between two such views, one may be more accurate. The point is that enemy perceptions often form mirror images. Retrieval practice. Answers in Appendix E. Promoting peace. LOQ 44-6. What can we do to promote peace? How can we make peace? Can contact, cooperation, communication, and conciliation transform the antagonisms fed by prejudice and conflicts into attitudes that promote peace? Research indicates that, in some cases, they can. Contact. Does it help to put two conflicting parties into close contact? It depends. Negative contact increases disliking, Kotzer and Wagner, 2021. But positive contact, especially non-competitive contact between parties of equal status, such as fellow store clerks, typically helps. Initially prejudiced co-workers of different races have, in such circumstances, usually come to accept one another. This finding is confirmed by studies of face-to-face contact between majority people and outgroups, such as ethnic minorities, older people, LGBTQ people, and people with disabilities. Among the 250,000 people studied across 38 nations, contact has correlated with, and in experiments has led to, more positive and empathic attitudes and reduced dehumanization. Bruno et al., 2021, Pettigrew and Trop, 2011, Trop and Barlow, 2018. Some examples. Countries and U.S. states that have the most immigrants tend to be the most supportive of immigrants. Outgroup prejudice is strongest in places with few immigrants. Myers, 2018, Schreira, 2020, Wagner et al., 2020. Straight, cisgender people's attitudes toward gay and transgender people are influenced not only by what they know but also by whom they know. Brown, 2017, Della Posta, 2018. In surveys, the reason people most often give for becoming more supportive of same-sex marriage is having friends, family, or acquaintances who are gay or lesbian. Pew, 2013. And in the United States, where 87% of people now say they know someone who is gay, attitudes toward same-sex marriage have become more accepting. McCarthy, 2019, Pew, 2016. Friendly contact, say, between black and white students assigned to share a college dorm room improves explicit and implicit attitudes toward others of the different race, and even toward other racial groups. Bruno et al., 2021, Onyeder et al., 2020. More than 100 studies reveal that even extended contact, knowing that in-group friends have out-group friends, improves attitudes toward the out-group. Joe et al., 2019. Straight people often are more accepting of gay people if their straight friends have gay friends. However, contact is not always enough. Despite laws that forbid school segregation, ethnic groups often resegregate themselves in lunchrooms, in classrooms, and elsewhere on school grounds. Alexander and Tredeus, 2010, Clack et al., 2005, Schofield, 1986. People in each group often think that they would welcome more contact with the other group, but they assume the other group does not reciprocate the wish. Richardson and Shelton, 2007. I don't reach out to them because I don't want to be rebuffed, they don't reach out to me, because they're just not interested. When such mirror image misperceptions are corrected, friendships may form and prejudices melt. Prejudice is learned behavior that can be unlearned. Desmond and Leah Tutu Legacy Foundation, 2019. Cooperation. To see if enemies could overcome their differences, researcher Muzafer Sharif, 1966, set a conflict in motion. He randomly separated 22 Oklahoma City boys into two separate camp areas. Then he had the two groups compete for prizes in a series of activities. Before long, each group became intensely proud of itself and hostile to the other group's sneaky, smart alecky stinkers. Food wars broke out. Cabins were ransacked. Fistfights had to be broken up by camp counselors. Brought together, the two groups avoided each other, except to taunt and threaten. Little did they know that within a few days, they would be friends. Me against my brother, my brothers, and me against my cousins, then my cousins and me against strangers. Bedouin proverb. Sharif accomplished this by giving them superordinate goals, shared goals that could be achieved only through cooperation. When he arranged for the camp water supply to fail, all 22 boys had to work together to restore the water. To rent a movie in those pre-streaming days, they all had to pool their resources. To move a stalled truck, everyone needed to combine their strength, pulling and pushing together. Having used isolation and competition to make strangers into enemies, Sharif used shared predicaments and goals to turn enemies into friends. What reduced conflict was not mere contact, but cooperative contact. When diverse people team up as equals and collaborate toward a shared goal, animosities abate and friendships form. Critics suggest that Sharif's research team encouraged the conflict, hoping the study would illustrate their expectations about socially toxic competition and socially beneficial cooperation. Perry, 2018. Yet, shared predicaments or a common enemy do have powerfully unifying effects. Those facing rejection or discrimination have developed strong in-group identification. Bauer et al., 2014, Ramos et al., 2012. Youth exposed to war also typically bond with one another. Bauer et al., 2014. Israeli children growing up in conflict areas often develop conflict-supportive perceptions, beliefs, and emotions regarding their shared adversary. Nacy et al., 2016. Such interpretations build in-group solidarity but also insensitivity to the pain experienced by those in the out-group. Levy et al., 2016. In the aftermath of a divisive U.S. primary election, party members will usually reunify when facing their shared threat, the opposing party candidate. At such times, cooperation can lead people to define a new, inclusive group that dissolves their former subgroups. DeVidio and Gertner, 1999. If serving as a peacemaker, you might seat members of two groups not on opposite sides, but alternately around a table. Give them a new, shared name. Have them work together. Enable them to see each other as part of one larger group. Then watch us and them become we. If cooperative contact between rival group members encourages positive attitudes, might this principle bring diverse students together? Could cooperative learning in classrooms create interracial friendships, while also enhancing student achievement? Experiments with adolescents from many countries confirm that the answer to both questions is yes. Trop et al., 2022. In the classroom as in the sports arena, members of multi-ethnic groups who work together on projects typically come to feel friendly toward one another. Knowing this, thousands of teachers have made multi-ethnic cooperative learning part of their classroom experience. The power of cooperative activity to make friends of former enemies has led psychologists to urge increased international exchange and cooperation. Some experiments have found that just imagining the shared threat of global climate change reduces international hostilities. Pisachinsky et al., 2012. From adjacent Brazilian tribes to European countries, formerly conflicting groups have managed to build interconnections, interdependence, and a shared social identity as they seek common goals. Fry, 2012. As we engage in mutually beneficial trade, as we work to protect our common destiny on this fragile planet, and as we become more aware that our hopes and fears are shared, we can transform misperceptions that feed conflict into feelings of solidarity based on common interests. Most of us have overlapping identities which unite us with very different groups. We can love what we are, without hating what and who we are not. We can thrive in our own tradition, even as we learn from others. UN Secretary-General Kofi Annan, Nobel Peace Prize Lecture, 2001. Communication. When real-life conflicts become intense, a third-party mediator, a marriage counselor, labor mediator, diplomat, community volunteer may facilitate much needed communication, Rubin et al., 1994. Mediators help each party voice its viewpoint and understand the other's needs and goals. If successful, mediators can replace a competitive win-lose orientation with a cooperative win-win orientation that leads to a mutually beneficial resolution. A classic example: two friends, after quarreling over an orange, agreed to split it. One squeezed his half for juice. The other used the peel from her half to flavor a cake. If only the two had communicated their motives to one another, they could have hit on the win-win solution of one having all the juice, the other all the peel. Conciliation. Understanding and cooperative resolution are most needed, yet least likely, in times of anger or crisis, Bodenhausen et al., 1994, Taitlock, 1988. When conflicts intensify, images become more stereotyped, judgments more rigid, and communication more difficult. Each party is likely to threaten, coerce, or retaliate. In the weeks before the 1990 Gulf War, U.S. President George H.W. Bush threatened, in the full glare of publicity, to kick Saddam's ass. Iraqi President Saddam Hussein communicated in kind, threatening to make Americans swim in their own blood. Under such conditions, is there an alternative to war or surrender? Social psychologist Charles Osgood, 1962-1980, advocated a strategy of graduated and reciprocated initiatives in tension reduction, nicknamed grit. In applying grit, one side first announces its recognition of mutual interests and its intent to reduce tensions. It then initiates one or more small, conciliatory acts. Without weakening one's retaliatory capability, this modest beginning opens the door for reciprocity by the other party. Should the enemy respond with hostility, one reciprocates in kind. But so, too, with any conciliatory response. In laboratory experiments, small conciliatory gestures, a smile, a touch, a word of apology, have allowed both parties to begin edging down the tension ladder to a safer rung where communication and mutual understanding can begin. Linskold, 1978, Linskold and Hahn, 1988. In a real-world international conflict, U.S. President John F. Kennedy's gesture of stopping atmospheric nuclear tests began a series of reciprocated conciliatory acts that culminated in the 1963 Atmospheric Test Ban Treaty between the United States and the Soviet Union. As working toward shared goals reminds us, we are more alike than different. Civilization advances not by conflict and cultural isolation, but by tapping the knowledge, the skills, and the arts that are each culture's legacy to the whole human race. Open societies are enriched by cultural sharing. Sowell, 1991. We have China to thank for paper and printing and for the magnetic compass that opened the great explorations. We have Egypt to thank for trigonometry. We have the Islamic world and India's Hindus to thank for our Arabic numerals. While celebrating and claiming these diverse cultural legacies, we can also welcome the continuing enrichment of today's cultural diversity. We can view ourselves as instruments in a human orchestra. And we can therefore each affirm our own culture's heritage while building bridges of communication, understanding, and cooperation across our cultural traditions. Peace is not just the absence of conflict. Peace is the creation of an environment where all can flourish, regardless of race, color, creed, religion, gender, class, caste, or any other social markers of difference. Former President of South Africa and anti-apartheid activist Nelson Mandela, 2004. Ask yourself: do you regret arguing with a friend or not getting along with a family member? How might you use these peace-promoting principles to resolve such conflicts, now or in the future? Retrieval practice. Answers in Appendix E. Review. Module 44, Processual relations. Learning objectives. Test yourself. Answer these repeated learning objective questions on your own, before showing the answers here, or checking the answers in Appendix D, to improve your retention of the concepts. McDaniel et al., 2009, 2015. Terms and concepts to remember. Test yourself. Write down the definition in your own words, then check your answer. Mere exposure effect. Passionate love. Companionate love. Equity. Self-disclosure. Altruism. Diffusion of responsibility. Bystander effect. Social exchange theory. Reciprocity norm. Social responsibility norm. Conflict. Social trap. Mirror image perceptions. Self-fulfilling prophecy. Superordinate goals. Grid. Module test. Test yourself. Answer the following questions on your own first, then show the answers here, or check your answers in Appendix E. Chapter 14 Personality, Modules 45 to 47. Module 45 Introduction to Personality and Psychodynamics.